Hello and welcome back to our channel. I believe it was Robert Frost who penned the quote, "Good fences make good neighbors," and it was from a poem called Mending Wall. Now, that quote is a great metaphor for personal boundaries. And so I'm going to be talking about boundaries. I've talked about boundaries. I had a series on boundaries, but I'm going to go ahead and I think this may be a little 3-part series also on boundaries. I want to unpack it again. I want to talk about it. I want it to be a reminder. And since we have a couple of new subscribers, since you may not have gone back to the videos, it's a lot. And so I just wanted to talk about this topic because it's a topic that's very dear to my heart, and it's a subject that I believe all Christians or all people, human beings, should incorporate boundaries. And it's a great thing to learn, especially as Christians. So let's talk about boundaries. What are boundaries? Let me define what boundaries are. Boundaries are real or imaginary lines, right? That mark the limit of an area. In a psychological and social context, they are the personal rules and limits we set to define what we find acceptable, safe, and comfortable in our relationships with others and with ourselves. Okay, that's a lot of words. What are boundaries, in my words? Well, boundaries are just limits that we set depending on the capacity that we have within different spheres. And they could be emotional boundaries. They determine, what I can take on or share or allow others to influence or affect my mood. They can be physical boundaries, right? This is my personal space, Don't come near here. This is me. This is my personal space. They can also have to do with our time and how we choose to spend it. And they can be material, where finances and where our possessions and how we choose to interact with others within that sphere. So those are the different areas where boundaries can operate. And we, just like the quote says, if we learn to set healthy boundaries, it'll actually benefit us. It benefits us to have boundaries set in place because they will allow us to operate in the freedom and in the wholeness of who we are and who we've been created to be. And it allows and it frees other people to also live and exercise their own freedom within their boundaries. So think of it this way, boundaries will help me live out in the freedom of who I am created to be. And it's not about controlling other people, because a lot of people are like, well, boundaries, it's like pushing other people. It's not about other people, actually. It's really about us, and it's about controlling and owning who we are. That's really what boundaries is about. Now, this is where it gets a little problematic. And I would say especially for Christians, because many of us come into, I'm going to say it, very toxic environments within Christian culture. And we are taught to basically give up or never get to, especially if you're brought up as a young person in a false religious environment, you're not taught to understand who you are. And we mask getting to know and doing the work, because it is work of understanding who we are. We mask it with, I'm just a wretched sinner, so let God take over. Oh, Jesus, take the wheel. You're in control. But yet we don't really understand, and we don't make the difference between, okay, it's good, to be more like Jesus. We do want to reflect his character. We do want to be more like him, but we operate, and that's our spiritual man, right? And that has to do with our identity in Christ. But my identity in Christ is also who I am, in a sense that I have capacity. I have a capacity for things. I have desires. I have needs. I have wants. And those all are all within that sphere. Yes, my identity in Christ. That's my position in Christ. But I have desires, and I am a person with needs and with capacity levels that make me very different from other people. And that has nothing to do with my spirit man, right? This is the capacity that I have in my emotions and in all the other areas that I talked about a few minutes ago. So this is where the problem starts, because we come into Christianity, into broken, and I have to keep saying it, into broken, toxic expressions of it, and we are basically never taught to get to know who we are. We are not taught to grow. I mean, I remember that what I would hear a lot, like when young people, would start to think about, okay, what do I want to do, as a career? The one thing that I remember hearing the most, you have to go to Bible college, That's the thing you want to do. You have to go to Bible college. And there's nothing wrong with it. And you could go, and it could be a great season, and it's great to know and get to know the Bible. But there are people who are called to something different, and it doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them, they're just operating out of the flesh if they want to pursue other things other than being a pastor. We have desires, we have callings that are different. And so we have to think and remember that we've been created. How have we been created, And that takes time. It takes time to try to understand who we are. And again, I keep using the word capacity, our capacity. We have to get to know our capacity. And so it sometimes in toxic environments, we are not taught that. We're taught to, again, that phrase, Jesus take the wheel. Yeah, well, I'm driving though. Jesus is within me, but it's my hands and I'm the one driving. And so he has to work through me and through this broken body and through who I am. And so that's where we sometimes make the disconnect. And we stop wanting to go, inward and getting to know who we are, getting to know our inner self and the inner healing work that may need to happen. We see that as being, useless at times. I've heard conversations, and so that's why I'm stating this. But no, that's not God's heart. God's heart is for us to thrive as the person that we have been created to be. And one perfect example of this is I remember reading or hearing somewhere where Chris Vallotton from Bethel Church said that he had an artist, or there was an artist there amongst them, and he was beautiful. He would paint, these beautiful pictures or portraits or whatever. And one day, it was either him or someone around him said, "Oh, that is so beautiful. It's just gorgeous." And the person just, went into this Christianese humility and said, "Oh, it's not me. It's all God. It's all God." And Chris turned around and said, "It's not that good. It's good, but it's not that good. It's not all God." We partner with God. And that's where, in boundaries, we have to get to know who we are. And so for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to talk about boundaries, and I'm going to break them down into the three steps that we need to establish in order to set healthy boundaries. Like, how do we set healthy boundaries? Well, there are 3 steps that we can take if we are choosing to set healthy boundaries. Now, the first thing we want to do is we need clarity. We need clarity. And so what happens is that, again, we don't get clarity because we fail to understand the importance of getting to know who we are and what our capacity is. And that's where it all begins. That's where the work of boundaries, setting healthy boundaries begins. It begins with getting to know who we are and having clarity. We need to be clear on our capacity, what we can handle, what we can't handle. And I'm going to use a quick example of when Paul and I, my husband and I, we would host college Bible studies on Friday nights. And we also, especially him, we were in the middle of raising our baby, so I was at home mostly with her. But he was doing all the time, super busy with ministry. So on Fridays, we would set up, and then we'd have college kids come over, and it would get packed, and sometimes they wanted to go late into the night, and then they would leave, and so we would set up, they would leave, and then we'd have to clean up, and it was a lot. It was a lot. But you know what? We also saw wonderful things happen. But one night, my husband, after a particularly long, evening, he turned to one of the kids who was going to be turning, I don't know how old they were going to have a birthday coming up, right? That Sunday. This was a Friday. And he turned to them and said, "Hey guys, hey everyone, let's just come back here on Sunday afternoon after the first service and we'll celebrate so-and-so's birthday." And I was livid. Because I'm like, really? You're inviting, a group of kids to come back after, everything we're doing, to come back and to make a mess again and basically more work. That's what I saw, right? But and the thing is I probably, which, I'm just being real here, I didn't say anything, but I passively aggressively probably said a lot that weekend. But I didn't communicate my capacity. And that had a lot to do with the image, that we wanted to, or we were taught, and I accepted that teaching of, trying to pretend, that we have all this capacity in ministry and that we can do for the Lord. It's all for the Lord. And so I wanted to portray that image. And so I did not speak up, and I did not talk about the capacity that I had, for this. And so I'm going to stop here because this is how I'll lead into the second step. So the first step is clarity. I needed to know why. I needed to be clear as to the why I had to set a healthy boundary there. Now, step 2 is communicating it. And that's what I'm going to talk about next week. Step 2 is communicating that boundary. We can do it a wrong way, really wrong, out of wrong motives, and it's not ever going to produce a good thing. So I want to talk about how to set a healthy boundary the right way and how to communicate it properly. Okay, so please make sure that, again, if you're new or if you're listening, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified when the next video drops. I pray you all have a blessed week. I pray you've been encouraged, and tune in for the next video. Have a blessed week. See you soon.